We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hope everything's going all right with you. I said that the last couple times in podcasts, and I know that's just silly because nobody that listens to this podcast is having a good day after what happened during election night. We have a guest with us today. She's a new guest. She's never been on the program before. Always excited about that. Her name is Kristen, and she is from California. And we're going to talk a little bit about media to begin with, which is interesting because your background is in media. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yes, Mike, thank you so much for having me. And I want to just tell everybody that I've been up all night, have not slept. I was shaking and crying in the middle of the night. And at some point today, I knew I had to get myself going again, put on my makeup, and come and be on the show. There was no way I was going to cancel, even though I'm like in grieving mode right now. And however you feel right now, I think is really valid. And I've seen a lot on social media telling everyone to like snap out of it and we've got to start planning. And if you're not there right now, if you are in shock to the point where you can barely function, self love and self care is going to be the most important thing. We have plenty of time to regroup and to strategize our way forward. But I think right now, honoring how you feel is how we transmute trauma. And if we stuff it down and just charge forward, it'll come back up on us later. So I grew up on the East Coast, right outside of Washington, D.C., and to a very conservative family and who are MAGA and very involved and very active in that culture. And I was a television producer for many years. I worked on The Housewives, I worked on Dance Moms, and I had like an epiphany that I could do so much more with my life. And I went back to school and I became a holistic healer and a Reiki master, and I started my own business. And when Kamala became the nominee, it energized me like it was like I got just totally activated. And I saw your podcast after becoming aware of who Arlene Unfiltered is.
Right.
And I saw Old Soul and she activated me even more. And I just have so much respect for her and everything that she has done. And I knew a group of healers that started a healing circle. And one of the ladies excuse me, both of the ladies are in swing states. So we started having healing circles with liberal and conservative women, and we were really focused on common values, common American values. And a lot of these women had already had the epiphany. They had had the awakening that 45 is a con man, a felon, an adjudicated rapist, all the things we already knew. And they wanted to learn what to say to their friends, what to say, how to message how they're feeling and how to communicate it with other women in their circle. And what really stood out to me that was beyond shocking was that there are women who are mothers who have given birth who believed the lie about Democratic women unaliving their babies after birth. They also were believing the lie that they would send their boy to school and their child would come home a girl. They also were believing that there were litter boxes at schools in Minnesota for children that identified as a cat to use the litter box. And I was
Ridiculous.
stunned by this. I mean, absolutely stunned.
Well,
Yeah.
and
And
that's well,
for a
that's
woman who's actually given birth to not understand,
go
yeah, go
ahead.
ahead.
No, that's all right. Go ahead. We got a little lag here in the video, so just yeah, feel free. Go ahead.
For a, for a woman who's given birth to not understand that this is totally and completely fabricated was just absolutely stunning for me.
So leading up to this, I'm well known for saying that Kamala will win. It shouldn't be a problem. I ended up getting some people, not very many, a few here and there. Mostly people were supportive and just as surprised as I was. But a lot of people got angry with me because they said, "You told us and you promised us." I go, "Look, dude, I'm an old white guy sitting in my living room. I'm not a psychic. I'm not a professional. All I can do is take a look at the facts and see where it goes." And why that was important is because if you watch the media, they tell you slanted facts or they omit things or they flat out lie to you. So all I'm trying to do is break it down in real terms and tell you what I see happening based on facts. Because if you look at facts and truth, you can pretty well determine where it's going to head. This totally blindsided everybody, and that truly amazed me.
I was blindsided as well, but I also think that we had to hold the faith. We had to believe that she could win. And
Absolutely.
if we had been doom and gloom leading up to the election, what good would that have done?
Yeah.
And I think one thing that we have to really understand, because I see this with my clients and I saw this in the healing groups, is that people are very traumatized still from 2016, especially women who are SA survivors. They
Right.
are very traumatized by him. And so they had big reactions. I saw a lot of creators get attacked on social media today that were the optimistic ones. And no, that's not fair. That's not okay. I understand people are frustrated, but it's not cool to take it out on you. I appreciate that you were positive. Like I said, what good would it have done if we were thinking we had lost before the election? That wouldn't have been positive for anyone.
And there's no reason to think anything other than what I said based on what we knew.
Yeah.
That's the weird
Yeah.
thing about
And I
this.
saw it. I saw conservative women that did and wanted to vote for Kamala. I mean, I saw it. I worked with them in swing states. So I'm having like a little bit of like denial. I'm not gonna lie. Like I don't understand. The numbers don't make sense to me. I don't understand what's happening in Pennsylvania. Um, I just know that 45 doesn't win fair and square. He doesn't
No.
care about winning fair and square. He is a plotter and schemer, and he would do anything to have what just happened. And so I'm just, I guess, questioning um, how how did he win Philadelphia?
Well, there's some people out there that, and I kind of hold back from doing this because I don't want to sound like a Trump-fuck, but there are people saying there's something fishy about it. There's a conspiracy theory, and much like the assassination attempts, there are some things that you have questions about. But to take it as far as a conspiracy theory, that might be
Yeah.
crazy. But then when you factor in Donald Trump, then anything's possible. But we had a record amount
And
of people early voting, and then we come up 18 to 20 million short of what we did in 2020. There's no way we should have less votes than in 2020.
and that's exactly what I'm saying. That doesn't make sense to me. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist either. And I shut people down. If they want to talk about conspiracy theories with no facts, I don't really want to hear that.
Right.
That's not me. But I something here, like what you were just saying about these 20 million votes, and they call things so fast. That was
Yeah.
odd to me as well. It was like just a low number of precincts would come in and they were boom ready to call it. Um, and
It took so much
yeah,
longer
it's
with
just
Biden. It took like a day or two before they called some of these states and 2% in. Yep, we're giving that to
yeah,
Donald Trump. That
yeah,
all seems very fishy. Now, I don't
yeah,
know if that means anything or I'm just
yeah,
reading into it, but you
yeah.
you have some questions. And the problem with these questions that we have, whether it be about the assassination or this, they never get answered. Nobody ever talks about it.
It just the news cycle moves so fast, and so it's just gone. And also the all the fire alarms that went off. That is very odd. They had how many fire alarms go off in multiple precincts in Georgia?
Well, they had bomb
And
bomb threats. Yeah.
yeah, right. So the fire alarm, bomb threat going off, then everybody's vacating the building, and it's just odd. It's like I said, something just sit right with me. It just is a feeling that I have. And I just look forward to all the votes being counted just to see where we are then.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to change anything. I get the impression, personally, and I know you were going to talk about this. I personally think with all the things we've dealt with Donald Trump, the media is culpable. They are complicit in the crimes or the
Mhm.
lies committed against the people. And I know you've been talking about some of the things with the people on the right. They're just spewing absolute garbage. And for whatever reason, people are taking it hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah. The media knows exactly what they're doing,
Hmm.
and they don't care about people. They care about the story. Okay.
Right.
So they care about the story and the ratings that the story generates, right? So the story of a celebrity in America sells, and he is a celebrity,
Right.
and Americans are starstruck. Americans are starstruck,
I agree.
and and so we have to understand that the media, legacy media, cable media, they don't care about us. They care about their bottom dollar.
Right.
And when I was a producer, I knew a lot of people that worked in cable news. And when there was the hurricane in Haiti, they had done an amazing special interest report about human interest, excuse me, about all of the people working together and getting each other supplies and community. And they brought that back to the bosses, and the bosses said, "No, go get us looting. We want to run a story about looting.
Yep.
We don't want to hear about community and people working together. That doesn't sell." So I think the thing that really also stood out to me and where you come in and where I think the Democratic Party needs to really start to look at is that the right has a machine. And the numbers that they get are astronomical compared to the left numbers. The podcasters, the Fox News, Ohan, they get millions and millions of impressions. And we don't really have on our side sane, competent commentators that are getting those type of views. I don't count the Lincoln Project or Midas Touch as like, to me, there's a lot of guys that are sus over there. So
Yeah, I kind of feel the
I'm a
same way.
little, yeah, I'm a little hesitant on both of them. So, and also with the Young Turks and TYT, I'm obsessed of those people over there too. But they don't get the numbers. They don't get
Yeah.
anywhere near what the right gets, and that I think is something we've got to address moving forward because we had the ground game, and we had great messaging, and she kept getting better and better. She kept literally, we were watching her just like grow and bloom and mature into president in front of our eyes. And we didn't, but what we didn't have, she was on the Call Her Daddy podcast, but what we didn't have was that very deeply embedded, trustable, like if they trust what Joe Rogan said, they trust what Ben Shapiro said, they trust Tucker Carlson. We don't have those trusted sources on this side.
Right. Absolutely.
And that's what I want to talk to you about is what do we need to do about that? How can we start to get that digital messaging going?
Well, yeah, that's a good point. I want to throw into, and I've said this before on the podcast, you talking about the right side media as far as their popularity. But I also think the left side media is culpable in how this all turned out and how it's been going on. I've said this a couple of times. And back in 2016 or 15, when Donald Trump came down the escalator, he announced he was going to run for president. At that moment, nobody took him seriously. Nobody thought he would really
Mm-hmm.
be a candidate. And he didn't become a credible candidate until the left side said, oh, shit, here's a clown. We can put him on the air. He's going to get viewership. He's going to make us money. So they put him on over and over and over again. And like advertising, he gained a certain amount of credibility. So that's why he ended up president. But going to this most recent time with Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, people talked about it. I loved how the news people talked about it and how they said it was unfair, but they're the fucking people that were doing it. Donald Trump could say the wildest crazy shit and he would get a pass. Kamala Harris was under the microscope. Joe had to stumble in his talk just a little bit, and it was devastating. The way the media handled this situation was unfair to the Democrats and was
Mhm.
basically feeding into the Republicans. And I don't honestly
Mhm.
think it's because they like Republicans better. It goes back to the old axiom in journalism. You probably remember journalism; it was before your time, but uh, the if it bleeds, it leads. That's kind of what you said about the looting and stuff. They want the salacious, the sexy, the traumatic types
Yeah.
of things. They don't
Yeah.
care about
Yeah.
anything good. They want it eye catching.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to understand, he understood reality gold. He was
Right.
actually a natural at it on The Apprentice. And I had a lot of friends that worked on The Apprentice and knew what a pig he was all the way back then, right? And they created a persona. And so when he came down that escalator, they literally followed him. They didn't stop. His plane would go there. They'd see him on the tarmac. They would just hold the shot of his plane. And they
Right.
would maybe go talk about Hillary for a second and then literally come back and just hold the shot of his plane because it was still playing on the persona that had been created from The Apprentice. But in reality, his boardroom was so shabby they couldn't film it and had to create a set. And like, and in reality, he had declared bankruptcy, and there was no reality of what the persona was. That is a reality personality that was created, by the producers of that show, and he was really good at it. And the way they have made Kamala responsible for what Joe said, that unforced error, um, but yet literally ignored him, like performing a lewd sex act. They literally showed the clip right before that and right after and skipped that. I saw it multiple times.
Yeah.
And it's almost like it just chalked up as, oh, it's just him. He's funny. He gets a pass. And it's so disingenuous. It's so lacks journalistic integrity. And I think so many of these journalists knew exactly what they're doing, even the people on Fox, and they don't care. They like power, they like a paycheck, they like to feel like they're in the know,
Right.
or they're power players. Um, but we have to learn from this, and we can't trust the cable news media. We can't trust legacy media anymore. And we also are going to have an issue organizing because all of these social medias are owned by the oligarchs. So
Yeah.
they know what we're doing. They
Right.
know our conversations. So you know, I, I'm asking these questions right now. There aren't going to be answers to all these questions, but I want to try to come out of the fog and the shock of what happened. Um, and I'm going to give myself like a day or two to regroup as well. But I think, a reckoning for the media has to happen. They let us down. I mean, they 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 let us down in such a un-American, unpatriotic, lack of integrity way. Like it's shameful. It's truly shameful.
Well, I've been talking about this on the podcast, and it's something that I've always had problems with the media. I worked in radio all of my life, so I kind of know how it works on a smaller scale anyway with radio, and what people do. But I've become so frustrated in doing what I do. I'll watch MSNBC or something like that, not so much to get the story, not to get to the meat of the story. I'll get what the story is, and then I'll go to sources I trust and get the information and try to corroborate things and then talk about it at that point. But after the experience we had with this situation and how they were part and parcel to Donald Trump stealing another election, essentially, my question is, why do we fucking watch them? They aren't good for us.
Mm-hmm.
They aren't good for the country. So I made a commitment. I'm not going to watch them at all. I mean, I can get news from any number of sources. So I'm just not going to sit there with it on like I have in the past because I can't trust them. And if you can't
Mm-hmm.
trust them, why would you waste your time?
I stopped watching CNN in 2016.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
And I still watched MSNBC. Yeah, I still watched MSNBC occasionally. Not anymore. No, absolutely not. And I was getting most of my news. I had a very curated Twitter feed,
Uh-huh.
and that was basically how I got my news. And I would really like know everything because the way Twitter used to be, you could really aggregate like all world news and know everything first, right?
Right.
Before it would hit mainstream media, it would always be on Twitter first. But today, and I had already started deleting tweets because I was like, I think I need to start clearing this out. Elmo is giving me like really bad vibes. But I think I'm going to delete it because I don't want to support him in any way. And just by being on that app, is giving him support and I don't want to. So I'm going to think about it overnight. I don't want to make any decisions, but as of right now, I think I'm going to delete my Twitter. And then I'm like, okay, how am I going to get all my news? Because
Right.
that was where I got all my news. So I got to think about that, how, what I'm going to do, but something's got to change because I'm not going to go back and watch them and I have to know what's going on.
Prior to doing having the election, not knowing that it was going to go badly, people would say to me, "Are you going to go away after the election?" And then after this election debacle, they say, "Are you going to go away?" I go, "No, of course not. I'm not going to go away, but I may rethink how I do it. Maybe not. Again, I have to sit on it for a little bit. But my problem, I'm trying to determine whether I just go back to old school journalism. I just tell you the facts and let you make the decision.
Mm-hmm.
Basically what I do is I analyze it and I kind of know how people think and I know how people work. And I can say, well, if this happened and this happened, this is going to happen. And generally I'm right. I mean, I had, one of the first times I ever did that was in 2022 when I said there wasn't going to be a red wave. And people thought it was amazing, but it wasn't because they just overturned Roe v. Wade. How the hell are you going to win an election after you just took rights away from women? So that was an easy one. But all through these 2 years, I've been doing that. And then here we are. In spite of the logic and the common sense of it, I'm wrong. Now, I don't have a problem with being wrong. I tell people I've been married 41 years. I'm wrong every fucking day, according to my wife. But the thing is, I don't want to do a disservice to the people by being wrong. And now I don't know that I can
Yeah.
trust the
Yeah.
situation because nobody's playing by the rules. Who knew half the country didn't think truth and facts is a thing anymore?
I know. And the tariffs and um, just the insurrection, what happened with COVID. And we can just go on and on and on. I can only give you, my opinion. I really enjoy your commentary.
Thank you.
I found your commentary exactly what you say, rational. And I totally respect whatever you want to do. I think it was really normal. I questioned everything as well. What am I doing? Do I want to, do I want to move to Thailand? I had those thoughts as well, but I don't want to make like any big decisions until I get grounded again. But I totally respect whatever you want to do. And I know that you have come from news and delivering the traffic was all facts, right?
Right,
And maybe you
right,
could throw a little bit of your personality in there too,
right,
but you were
exactly.
delivering facts. And so, however you feel, I will be here and listen to it. Like I said, I really appreciate your commentary. It did calm me down. I know it was annoying for everybody to be coming at you like that,
Well,
but
not too bad.
we, we're traumatized. We
Right.
are traumatized, and we have to find our own coping mechanisms because they're going to be really ugly and nasty. They were waving flags and screaming and like drag racing up and down the street last night.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, they're a
So
classy crowd. Um,
yeah, yeah,
people are one of the reasons why people are terrified going into this next term is all the crazy shit that Donald Trump said, tariffs,
yeah, yeah,
mass deportation, and such.
yeah,
And I think people have to understand is with Donald Trump, a lot of it is hyperbole. Donald Trump is a narcissist. When he feels cornered, he pulls anything out of his ass and he just says it.
yeah.
I don't think Donald Trump has the intellect or the cognizance to make those kind of decisions. And I don't think the Republican Party will allow him to do that. Honestly, I think what happens is he comes in, he's lazy, he doesn't want to do anything anyway. The
Yeah,
Republicans pull the strings and say, sign this or say that. And he's happy with it because he's getting the
yeah.
adulation and the pats on the back. So I don't think when he comes in office, it's going to be this well, maybe draconian, but not to the extent that people are fearful of. It's going to be more tempered. That's not to say the Republicans won't do some crazy shit, but I don't think you're going to get caravans of 18 million people to deport them because that just makes no sense economically, logistically, nothing. No way they can pull
They've
that
been
off.
my whole life they've been threatening to deport them.
Right.
They
True.
they have been threatening that literally for as long as I can remember. Um, I I think that he's going to do things that we couldn't fathom. There's going to be things that are going to be unfathomable. But I do agree with you that the Republican Party wants to keep themselves in power and wants to keep their party together. And so there will be some sort of parameters that he's put in. I'm wondering what you think about how long it will be before we have President Vance. And don't you think that the people that actually wrote Project 25, they're going to actually be the ones in charge?
I think if Vance is the president, yeah, I think Donald Trump is such a
Yeah.
wild card. He's not going to listen to anybody, and they have to say the wrong thing, and he'll get pissed off at him. But early on, I think it was Old Soul who said, "I think that Donald Trump will get in there. They'll get him out with the 25th Amendment or whatever, just so JD
Mm-hmm.
Vance could be the president." Um, I thought that was crazy at first. I thought that was a conspiracy theory. But then as I go further
Mm-hmm.
into this, I look at it and see how close Elon Musk and Peter Thiel are to JD Vance. And then I realized JD Vance is the vice president because Peter Thiel and Elon Musk funded a lot of stuff for
Yeah.
Donald Trump. And that's all you have to do is give him money, a kiss on the cheek, and tell him he's a genius and
Yeah.
he'll do whatever you want. So you have to wonder about that because Donald Trump in his current mental state is a liability, not only to Democrats, not only to the country, but to the Republicans. They have some things they want to do. And if Donald Trump wants to stomp his feet and say, I don't want to do that, they aren't going to stand for that.
Mm-hmm. I feel like you're right, and he's exhausted,
Oh,
and
yeah.
he doesn't look well, and he wants to golf. So I think we'll see him on the golf course, and JD Vance and the Heritage Foundation or the architects of Project 2025 will dismantle the federal government. I think depending on where you live, it will affect you differently. I think that when he says that he's going to dismantle the Department of Education, I believe him. Um,
I understand that, but he
I
can't
am
do that
worried.
without he can't do that without the Congress, though.
Right, right. Do we have the House right now? What is the last
I,
total?
I don't know. I know we're waiting for California, and that could be Friday before we know anything. And that is a
Okay,
key issue. I hear people talking all the time. We lost the House. We are going to win the House. I don't know what it is. And at this point, I'm so
that
frustrated with
makes a
anything.
big difference.
It does because then
Yeah, that makes
Hakeem,
a big difference. Yeah, if we have the House, yes, we can put some guardrails up if Hakeem Jeffries is in charge. If Mike, MAGA Mike is in charge, we're in big trouble.
yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. And
Yeah,
I don't know where
yeah.
we are. I'm sure somebody in the audience will send me an email and tell me, but we really don't know anything until the California things come in. I can only hope that we have a majority. And that's the weird thing about it. I felt pretty confident that we'd have 10 or 20 seats in a majority in the House. And now we're, you know, standing on our tippy toes waiting to see if we even have the majority. None of this makes sense. None of it makes
No,
sense.
something is rotten in Denmark. As you're saying that, all I can hear is like something's rotten in Denmark. All right, well, I was just in Orange County, and that is a conservative part of California. People think that California is all liberal. No, not at all. The district that I live in is a blue district, but the particular part of the district that I live in is or a lot of Republicans. Now, I had a bellwether friend, a man, everyone has like the fancy house in the neighborhood. He
Yeah.
lives in that house,
Okay.
right? The real fancy one. And he told me after the convention he was voting for Joe because he felt that Trump had given a very bad convention speech and he was not impressed. And then he jumped right on the Kamala train. This was the first Democrat that he had ever voted for. He did not vote for Barack Obama or Bill Clinton. So, and he told me all of his friends were doing the same. So even the conservatives in my own district, in my own neighborhood, voted for her. And he's sort of like the ringleader. He's like,
Right.
everybody
Right.
knows him. He's super friendly and he's very vocal politically. And I walk early in the morning and so does he. And so we always chit chat. And so I was in Orange County. That is very different from where I am. That with Trump signs everywhere. I was stunned. So we'll have to see that in it goes back and forth. Sometimes you'll have more blue seats down there, sometimes more red. And since it's every 2 years, it sort of goes back and forth. And we lost Katie Porter because she ran for
The Senate.
Senate, so her seat's up for grabs. Yeah. And then Adam Schiff's seat is up for grabs as well. He is going to be the new senator, and he is a congressman from LA, and his district is very powerful. He had all of the Hollywood studios in his district.
Oh, wow.
So that's why Adam Schiff is very powerful. I always explain that to people that don't live in California. Is they're like, how did Adam Schiff become so powerful? It's because of where his district is. All the big studio heads are all friends of his and his donors, and he's going to be a pretty powerful senator.
You got to wonder who, with these people that may be powerful, are true Republicans and conservative, how they feel about Donald Trump, because he's neither. He's not a Republican and he's not conservative. Otherwise, he wouldn't have put $8 trillion into the budget, added on to the debt anyway, when he was in office. I don't know what it is that is the attraction. I mean, he's an embarrassment. He will say and do crazy shit, and he does the opposite of what he's supposed to
Yeah.
do as a conservative. I don't understand what the attraction is.
I think they hate him, but he's a means to their end, and they have no integrity. And I think that they it's straight up, they have no integrity. One thing that started to come out when the little Epstein files came out, and also Steve Bannon was mentioned in there. There was like a conversation between Jeffrey and Steve where he pits everybody against each other. Right. So everybody in his inner
Right.
circle, he tells this guy, I hate this guy, I hate this guy. So it's not like they're friends or like I think it's like the gentleman's agreement. We all have dirt on each other,
Yeah.
so we're friends. Yeah.
We're
But I think they hate him. I don't think the Republicans actually like him.
that's been my thought too. I thought originally when he was running for president, the Republicans didn't want him. They knew he was a fool. They knew he was a goof. They knew he was a joke. But when they saw that he got some traction and he could get elected, I think you're right about being a means to an end. He's an asshole. He's a jerk, but he can get us something we want. And then once we get there, we can manipulate him, set him in a chair in the corner, and then do what we want. And and I try to tell people this, and they disagree with me. I think when Donald Trump came in, as goofy and as stupid as he is, I don't think he had any evil intentions necessarily, other than getting attention and money. But when the Mitch McConnells and all the other Republicans around him saw that they could manipulate him, they just twisted him every which way. And he didn't care as long as he got what he wanted. He's like the baby, give me the bottle, I'll do whatever you want. And so through that, he becomes this evil person. But I don't think he's smart enough to strategize and come up with master plans or anything like that. He's really being guided the whole way.
Oh no, it's Stephen Miller, Steve Bannon, all of those guys are the ones that are coming up with the master plan. He's just the front guy. That's all. He's just the face of the operation. It's Steve Bannon said years ago on his podcast they had a plan to destroy this country and they were going to tear it all down, and he was their guy to do it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he is smart enough. Unfortunately, Stephen Miller, he was the architect of the the family separation. These guys like hurting people. And one thing that's really hard for our side to wrap their head around, because we're not like this, we want a better world for everybody. They like hurting people.
Yeah.
They like it. MAGA inspires people to be their worst self, even 45. And you were rewarded for being your worst self. Who can out crazy each other?
Right.
And so it's the standard of how to stand out is something that's hard for our side to wrap its head around because we don't do that. We don't do that.
I'm curious as to what you think about this. Everybody was worried about Donald Trump loses. There's going to be violence, the Proud Boys, and all that stuff. And I never thought that was going to be a thing because Joe Biden's in office, and it's a much different situation than we had in 2020. I've said that I'm more concerned about violence if Donald Trump wins. And it's not because Democrats are violent by nature, because they're not, but they are terrified. I mean, they're terrified for their very lives, for the future of this country. And it wouldn't be hard to
Yeah.
get a faction of people to say, I don't care. I'm losing my country. I'm losing my life anyway. I'm just going to do
Mhm.
something. And I don't know whether that means going after Donald Trump specifically or some kind of mass engagement. I don't know that that's going to happen. But if we are going to see something like that, it's going to be from
Mhm.
the left side or somebody connected to the left side. I believe that.
I unfortunately that wouldn't surprise me. And when you're saying that, I'm thinking, where's Merrick Garland?
Yeah.
Where's the DOJ? Where's the FBI? How did Christopher Wray let not one, but two would-be ASS assassin trying to unalive 45? How did two of them get that far?
I'll just give you a
For
tip.
me, I
I'll just give you a tip. We're on the podcast. You don't have to use those TikTok
mhm.
pseudonyms. You can say
Okay,
dead. You can say
okay,
killed. You
okay,
can say
okay,
assassination.
okay. Okay, okay. All right, sorry. I'm used to like using all the covert
No, no,
words,
no.
right?
It's no
Because you don't
problem.
want to get dinged. Okay. Um, I feel like Christopher Wray has failed miserably. I feel that Merrick Garland has failed miserably. I think this is one of the only things that the Biden administration did poorly was not get rid of Christopher Wray immediately because he was not an appointee of their administration. And I think that at some point we should have seen the writing on the wall with Merrick Garland and let him go as well. I think at this point, um, lone wolf stuff happens. Unfortunately, that's part of the society we live in. And but I think that because Joe Biden is president, we'll be okay. Ultimately, this administration is competent
Yeah.
and they will do the right thing. Um, so I don't think we'll have anything like January 6th, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was some, something happened.
Well, they already tried twice with Donald Trump, so who the hell knows? And it was Republicans.
Well, and that's and where are like so I said that's such a failure. We've had so many failures in our intelligence committees, and like you said, we're like, wait a minute, what happens? Is there investigation? And it all just gets like swept under the rug. I was thinking like, what can Jack Smith do right now? Does he need to just flee the country? They wrap up all of the cases. What happens with Judge Marchand? There's so many unknowns right now. So many
Well,
unknowns.
well, I heard that Jack Smith is allegedly talking to the DOJ about what he needs to do to ramp down these these trials, because of course there's no
Mhm.
law, there's nothing in the Constitution, but there's this apparently very powerful memo that says you can't indict a sitting president. Well, he's already been indicted. So does that mean you can't put him
Yeah.
on trial once he's been indicted? And of course, we've got this other situation with the sentencing come up. He will be a citizen when he's sentenced, but he's already been found guilty. It's not like you can say, okay, he's not guilty anymore. They have to sentence him. And it'll be really interesting to see
Yeah.
what this judge does or can do given the circumstances. But for all intents and purposes, if Merrick Garland had done his job 2 days after Biden was inaugurated, we'd be done with this. Donald Trump wouldn't be an issue. He'd be out of the way. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
Merrick Garland has not only not done his job, you could almost say that he is a villain in this whole thing.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I He has failed so miserably. The American people deserved to know the truth before this election. And it was bad enough that all of the insurrectionists in Congress got reelected right after. And then, so we've had how many cycles? We've had special elections, we've had the 2022 election. So they have gotten reelected, like Jim Jordan, Marjorie Taylor Greene, all these people that were involved are got to run again and get reelected without the American people knowing the facts. And that is a travesty. And I wish Jack Smith would speak up before or leak it or do something. The American people deserve to know. He said in a filing with Judge Cannon that he knew why 45 had sold those documents, what he had sold them for, and that he could prove it.
Yeah.
He said it.
Well, and that's the thing is so frustrating is the people on the right, all the criminality, all the corruption, all the treasonous behavior against this country, they don't fucking care. They don't care. It
No.
doesn't matter to them. It's all about their guy getting in. And that is a dangerous situation to be in. They go into office now. There is no checks and balances because they don't care.
No. And that is frightening. That is frightening because it's a failure of our education system that
Yeah.
Americans are not able to critically think. And it also, racism is not taught. Racism is taught. It is not natural, right?
No.
Children are not born that way. And every night at the dinner table, would hear racist tropes.
Yep.
And I was so embarrassed when friends would come over because they would be highly offended. And I grew up in a very multicultural area. And there was something in me that knew this wasn't right. Even as a little girl, I knew it wasn't right, even though I loved my grandma and I loved my grandpa, but what they were saying I knew wasn't true for me. And so we have to address, and as much as I don't like to admit this, that we are a racist country still.
Absolutely.
This country was founded upon racism and founded upon white supremacy. Some rich white guys did not want to pay their taxes. They wanted to make moonshine, grow marijuana, not pay their taxes, have mistresses. We were lied to and told that Thomas Jefferson loved Sally Hemings and they had a secret affair. No, she was 12 and he was a pedophile.
Yeah,
And they
absolutely.
had many children that they shipped off to France because it would have shamed him.
Right.
And I remember being taught that and going, whoa, like fourth grade, I knew. Like, so what we are taught and the foundation of America is not built on the values that we want to see moving forward. And so there we have a disconnect that I'm not sure how we bridge. How do we get through the misogyny? You know, we knew who he was in 2016 with the Access Hollywood tape. He told us. He always tells us who he is.
Yeah.
And like you said, it didn't matter. And I don't even think, and you can tell me what you feel. Do you think even if they knew why he had sold the documents, who he had sold them to, what he had given away would even make a difference?
No, I don't think it makes any difference at all. I think these people are so indoctrinated into this cult that
Mm.
they don't give a shit. All right, just a reminder, we are talking to Kristen. She's in California. She's a former producer with reality television. She then decided to leave the dark side and go into something more positive, like holistic healing, Reiki healing. And we're glad to have her on the program. She offers some interesting insights, not only about television, about the well being of people, but you're a much younger woman than I am. And you were talking about how you heard racism at the dinner table and you were appalled by it. I grew up in the 60s and 70s. And back then, what's even more troubling is racism was an everyday thing. It was accepted. The use of the N word, nobody really cared about that. I mean, it was just built into everything. And over the years, people felt like racism was getting better. Of course, white people thought it was getting better. And then all of a sudden it flares up again with Donald Trump. And it's my contention that it's always been pretty much the same. It's just a period of time when there was too much pressure for them to speak out. So they slid under their rocks and they didn't say anything up until the time Donald Trump steps up and says, "Hey, it's cool to be racist again." You get that same sense? I don't think your grandparents are any less racist or more racist than my grandparents.
Oh, it was less socially acceptable.
Yeah,
But their views didn't change, just less socially acceptable. Um, with the Archie Bunker, right? If you watch an episode of All in the Family, it is pretty offensive,
yeah. Now it is pretty
right?
offensive.
And by today's standards, like totally unacceptable, right? And he was very racist and made a lot of racist jokes, and that was funny, right? That was what was considered comedy. And in the 90s, when I was growing up, there was still, and I think this is improving, but obviously we still have a long way to go. Um, you didn't really come out. So that really hadn't gotten uh, too big yet. Kids were still in the closet when I was in high school. And in college, they came out, where I think now a lot of kids feel more comfortable to come out in high school years. But I think that the racism and misogyny of the patriarchy um, is so deeply ingrained in our
Right,
society.
right,
Even if you watch an episode of Friends, it's highly offensive. They fat shame Monica constantly, right? So prior to
right.
like Monica then being skinny, they do flashbacks in which she was younger, she was heavier, and they fat shame her. Like it's really gross. And every new person that comes, they make fun of behind their back, right? So all the guest stars, on for each week, and I was on an episode of Friends.
Wow.
Um,
Really?
Yes, yeah, and I sat on the purple couch. Yes, and most of my big scene was somewhat cut, so mostly you just see the back of my head. Um, uh, but just how far we've come from 2000, right, when that show was popular, right, in the early 2000s to now, the Gen Z kids are different, right? And so we will see a change, right? We will see a changeover because what was socially acceptable for boomers started to change for Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z. Um, I haven't seen the Gen Z numbers, but I think uh, Gen Z girls, females leaned Kamala, and unfortunately males, because of what I was talking about, like the Ben Shapiro's, Andrew Tate's, and the right wing media, and the Joe Rogans, I think they leaned 45,
I think they
the
did.
numbers, but
Yeah.
I'll have to double check that. People can let us know in the comments. Yeah. And so, yeah, we have a lot of work to do. And when institutionalized racism was built into our system, right, into our foundation, and so they've always, like, the patriarchy's always had a head start, right? They always were a little bit ahead because of the way the system has been set up.
Yeah. I was talking to Abe Gurko earlier. He's on a previous podcast. Um, he is Won't Be Silent on TikTok, and he's a Jewish gay man in Los Angeles. Um, but he's he doesn't give a shit about the racism and the anti-Semitism. But he made a good point in this last election when we have half of the country voting for somebody who is a known or convicted racist, sexual abuser, and all these people, even though they know all this, support him wholly. The
Yeah.
only way you can look at this is half the country is racist, misogynistic, maybe anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
It's terrifying to think that there are that many people in this country that are that hateful and that fucking stupid.
Yeah. And unhealed. And they have no interest in any type of self-improvement. Like I said, it's they
Right.
want to go the other way. And that, I think reality TV, unfortunately, the media has played a role in that where we built these people up. The crazier you act, come right on over to our show, right? So there is this aspect of pop culture that, and even social media of how boisterous and flamboyant can I be for clicks and views? And you know, it's it's not an easy pill to swallow, at least for me, to really like think about how deeply embedded racism is in our country. And but I know that it is, and we can't ignore that, and we can't pretend that it's not. And yes, we do need to call them out, and they freak out when we call them out. How dare, they act all wounded, and but if we don't call it out, it just keeps going.
Well, that's
And he was talking about his white skin just the other day. If you,
right.
you ever remember that, but how his beautiful white skin. I mean, it was all a dog whistle. I knew we know what you're saying.
Well, that's the thing. People after this election, I got people who were mad at me. Not that many. I was surprised by how few there were. But a lot of people said, we felt the same way you did. We stand behind you. And other people would come to me and said, Mike, how you doing? Are you okay? Go, of course I'm fucking okay. First of all, I don't get emotional about this shit. Second of all, I've been through every trial, tribulation, and tragedy any of you have had, and somehow we're still sitting here. I try to be pragmatic about this. When I have a problem or something goes wrong, I step back, I look at it, try to figure out what's going on. And then the next thing is to decide what I do next. And there's always something next because you got to keep pushing forward. I said, listen, man, I don't have anything to worry about. I'm the preferred species of the Republicans, an old, white, cis male. I got no
Yeah.
problems. They're not going to mess with me because of who I am and because I happen to fit the bill that they appreciate. But I think it's incumbent on all of us, the people like me that don't have that problem. We really need to make some kind of effort to protect our brothers and sisters in LGBTQ, people of color,
Yeah.
people of different religions,
Yeah.
people of different nationalities. Um, because if we don't do it, there's nobody else to protect them. So I'm curious, what the hell can we do to protect them? I mean, what do we do?
That is a very good question because I have several clients who have trans and non-binary children, and they are terrified. Um, what we do is we are vocal advocates for them. And if the people that are from marginalized community that are in your life, you need to tell them that you are an ally. And you tell them,
Yeah,
you do tell them that you have their back and that they're important and that they matter to you. And then you have your platform. And what I appreciate about you when you say, oh, you're an old white guy, but yes, you are an evolved old white guy because you care about your granddaughter and the future for your granddaughter. And
yeah,
that's where so many Americans have gone wrong, where they were like, well, it doesn't affect me. Hello, we're a community. We have to
right.
care about one another. And I heard a lot of that too from women that, you know, it doesn't affect me. And so why should I care? And I was really stunned to hear that from women that felt that um, they could compartmentalize in that way. And I say, let's have an open heart. And the people that we care about in our life, let's make that clear that we have their back and that we are an ally. And no, we're not trying to save anybody or be better than anybody, but we want you to know that we care.
People threw around the term civil war at the prospect of Donald Trump losing. And I'm curious as to what you think. I think we're currently in a civil war, a cultural civil war. We've got two sides, totally the opposite, and we're fighting against one another. And now the racist, misogynistic, anti-Semite, white supremacist, they have a leg up right now. And a lot of people I talk to, and I get frustrated by this because it's just not my mentality. A lot of them say, "Oh my God, we lost. All is lost. The sky is falling. I'm just going to curl up in a ball and sit in the corner." And that does nobody any good. People like to feel sorry for themselves if things don't go the way they want. Uh, we've got to take this moment and actually do something to bring it back to where it's supposed to be. But there's a lot of people that don't have the courage, and it's not because they're not brave. It's because of their surroundings, bosses, family, friends. They're afraid to speak out. I mean, that's one of the things that I learned from doing what I do that I didn't know was going to be a byproduct. People would say, "You're saying exactly what I think." And I go, "Why don't you just say it?" And they can't. They either don't have the platform, they don't have the courage or the aptitude to do it, or they've got all the pressures of the people around them that would shut them down if they tried. So there has to be mouthpieces out there, at least to stir the shit, as it were. And that's kind of how I see myself, as a shit stirrer. Sorry to be indelicate there,
Yeah, you
but
got to call it out. No, we
yeah,
have to call it out. Not calling it out. And in the spiritual community, there is so much like, oh, love and light. Where is love and light going to get us when they are? It's like, they are literally showing up with guns, knives, and 1,500 savage people ready to do some serious damage, and we're bringing love and light. No, I'm sorry. And so I have been talking to these kind of, I don't want to, if apathetic is the word, but there is the group that is apathetic. What I have found is Americans can unite on values. And we are in a civil war, but it's a digital civil war. It's a different
right,
type of civil war. It looks different. It's been orchestrated by Fox News and the ilk. Okay.
right.
That's what they want. They want division, and they are sowing the seeds. If there was no Rush Limbaugh, because that's Rush Limbaugh really played a big part in my family and the racism. Um, if there wasn't Rush Limbaugh, if there wasn't Fox News, we would not be in the situation we are. There, at some point, has to be disinformation laws. And I don't know how we're going to get there from here, but there needs to be disinformation, some sort of AI program that can quickly identify disinformation, and it needs to be against the law. Or you need to clearly state this is parody, or right, this is the onion, right? And so I don't think that the laws have caught up with the technology. And I do think that our country is more divided than ever. But what I saw working in these healing groups with women from all different backgrounds, socioeconomic, uh, you know, all different wages, income, and all different walks of life, is that we could unite on values, American values,
Well, there was once a law.
healthcare.
There was once a law called the Fairness Doctrine, which I don't know if it
Yeah.
would have fixed everything, but it did keep people in line in terms of the media. But of course,
Hmm.
Ronald Reagan got rid of it. And since then, it's been
Yeah.
the Wild West and everybody's running
Yeah.
rogue.
Yeah. And Ronald Reagan, my other grandfather actually knew what Ronald Reagan was going to do. He saw the writing on the wall, and this man is going to destroy the middle class. I can't believe Americans just fell for an actor. He said it for literally years and years and years, because he was literally like completely dumbfounded that Americans had fallen for an act. Right? He was like, "It's all an act. How can nobody see this?" And he said, and I remember this as a little girl, he's going to stack the courts. He's going to ruin the middle class. He knew what he was going to do. And we have not rebounded from that. That was also the shenanigans. They really plotted to sabotage Carter to get Reagan in there, right? They didn't want the hostages to come home. They really sabotaged the end of Carter's administration. So the GOP has been up to this. They've been working on this for a long time,
I
for a
would
long
say that
time.
I would say that Ronald Reagan is about the same level as Donald Trump. And people will say, no, that's not true. He was as much of a tool as Donald Trump is. The only thing
Yeah.
he had going for him, he had a smoother delivery in the way he spoke.
Hmm.
He was a little more
Yes.
intelligent, not a ton more
Hmm.
intelligent, but he could sound intelligent. And he was made to do the things that Donald Trump is being made to do now. It's just, you know, Donald Trump is just less sophisticated and less communicative.
Yeah.
What happens? Let me ask you this: what happens? Donald Trump, as you said, he's old, he's sickly. I don't care what anybody says, physically, mentally, his cognizance is failing. If he does keel over or they push him out, now JD Vance would take his place. Are we any better off with the JD Vance?
JD No, it's worse. To me, JD Vance is Ted Bundy. Have you ever seen the movie American Psycho with Christian Bale?
Yeah,
That's the vibes I get from JD Vance. I'm not kidding. For me, he is like a Ted Bundy. And if people aren't familiar with that reference, Ted Bundy was a serial killer who was good looking and charming. And that's what Ronald Reagan was. He was good looking and charming.
yeah,
And he was the modern day celebrity, right? And literally, what is Donald Trump? Oh, he's not that good looking, but that charm and the con man sales, used car salesman kind of act. And Americans fell for it twice.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, Donald Trump may
yeah,
not
it's
be the young, attractive guy. He's more the heel in pro wrestling, and people love him
right.
and they hate
And he
him,
he actually
and
did
that's what he
he actually
is.
did the pro ref. He actually
Right.
did some WWE stuff, I think, at one point. Um, for whatever reason, people think that, the way that he talks is authentic or, he's real, right?
Yeah.
And then he says the most disgusting thing I've ever heard. And then, oh, that's just Donald, right? Let him say, that's just him. And Ronald Reagan didn't say that kind of really gross stuff, right? He did horrible things like, we can blame the mental health crisis on him. Uh, there were all kinds of things that lead back to him, but he didn't speak that way. He spoke much more presidential. And so, you know, both are frightening, but with JD Vance, there's something very wrong there. There's something very wrong. How he went from being a never Trumper to the VP when he said all the things that he said about him. Um,
Well,
there's yeah. So
I,
there's something wrong.
I think I can tell you how we went from that to this, and that was simply Elon Musk and Peter Thiel's money and control.
Yeah,
He's a
yeah,
tech bro like they are, and I think a lot of
yeah.
people are thinking that's the ultimate goal is to get the Elon Musk and the Peter Thiel. Neither one of them could be president because they weren't born in this country, so they needed some kind of
Proxy.
stooge,
Mm-hmm.
and I think they pushed real hard to get um, JD Vance in as vice president. I don't know that Donald Trump would have picked him normally or would have kicked him out by now, but he never did. And that's got to be because of Peter Thiel and Elon Musk's money. Um, but I think they look at Donald Trump and they're seeing the same thing we are. This guy is
Mm-hmm.
ancient and he's
Mm-hmm.
fragile. And even if they don't try to push him out, he's not going to make it for 4 years. I don't think he'll make it for
Mm-hmm.
4 years. And then all of a sudden, JD Vance is the president. It's not that crazy to think that that's the ultimate plan.
I think that is the plan. I think he plans on golfing. I don't think he plans on doing much. He didn't like the ceremonial part of the presidency, which is a good portion of it. He didn't like that.
Right.
And I don't think he's going to do much of that. And I think JD Vance will be a pseudo president just for the simple fact that 45 is going to want to golf. And then at some point they'll either nature or 25th Amendment will happen and we'll have him as president. Yeah. The Elon Musk and Peter Thiel want to have their crypto take over.
Yeah.
They want to dissolve the American dollar. They want to control that crypto. And that's part of why they're behind this is because they want that control of the crypto market.
Right. It all seems
Yeah.
very sinister and
Um,
very, very movie like, but it seems to be real.
I mean, it's if you've ever seen Elon on Joe Rogan, he is not sober.
He's a
He's not
weirdo.
sober.
He's either weird
he
or high. You're
he
right.
talked about doing all kinds of drugs, drugs I never even heard of. I had to look up. I didn't even know what he was talking about. And he was high on drugs on the show, and he told Joe Rogan he does all of these drugs.
Yeah.
So he's not sober. And I think when I think he thinks of humans as ants. I don't think he has like humanity where he thinks of humans as people and has empathy. He looks at humans as ants, as workers. And so that, you know, JD Vance and Donald Trump are both just means to the end for them to do their crypto, to have their workers, and to control things like, you know, a megalomania. I guess they're megalomaniacs.
Right.
And um, I think that what they're planning on doing to the government, that's he went into Twitter and like fired everybody, right? Got rid of everybody. They want to do the same thing to the federal government.
Right. Right. It
Yeah.
almost seems like we've got two sets of separated or separately operating villains. We've got the evangelicals, the Project 2025 over here. Elon and Peter Thiel don't give a shit
Mm-hmm.
about that. They just want the money out of the deal, which makes it an interesting combination.
Yeah.
What I'm curious is to if one of those sides is going to get tired of the other side and push the other one out or do something to self-destruct the other one.
That's what I was just going to say, because there's no way that the Mitch McConnell and the establishment GOP, Elmo and Peter and the Heritage Foundation and there's Project 2025, there's no way all of these egos can get along. There's no way. And they will all backstab each other. It will just be a shit show. There's no way that all of those personalities and all of those objectives can all work together. No way.
Do you think given that I've heard people say this too, and it's not that out of the realm of possibility. We've seen Donald Trump do it before. We've seen the Republicans do it before. When they're into these sorts of things and they're bumping heads with one another, they can be a little incompetent and they end up imploding. They don't get to where they want to go because they're stepping on each other's feet. And their incompetence or their greed or the fact that they're infighting, that they can't get anything accomplished because they're fighting amongst themselves. I mean, I guess I'm hoping that's the case. I don't know that it is, but we've seen these
I
people
think
fail
that will be
before.
the case to absolutely, because it's just a three ring circus. And I think that's yes, I think that will be the case to some extent, but I also think the people in Project 2025 have been ready to implement this, and they don't have bumbling idiots. They will have competent people ready to dismantle things. As you were saying that, I'm thinking, who wins here, right? The GOP establishment, the tech bros, the Heritage Foundation. Who's the last man standing? The
Personally,
guys with money.
well, the guys with money, but
Mm-hmm.
we've seen it with Donald Trump. Everybody's worried about how he's going to do all these crazy things, and he said some crazy things. But the Republican establishment does have to maintain a certain amount of decorum because they're going to implode themselves. I'm surprised they haven't as yet. But I've seen the Republicans pull back on Donald Trump, and they're probably, they're arrogant, they got egos. They're probably going to get a little raise their ire about the Elon Musk and Project 2025 because MAGA is really into the Project 2025, but the rest of the Republicans aren't really that way regardless of what the money
Mm-hmm.
is. They have their own sources of money. So what I see is like three different factions all fighting for power, and that never turns out well. They usually all end up failing. I think if anybody's going to win, it would have to be the establishment Republicans, because amongst all this other shit going on, they're the only ones that know how the governmental system work. And we saw with Donald Trump, if you don't know how the system works, you're fucking lost. And we saw how it does work with Joe Biden, who knows it better than anybody. Um, It's hard
Yeah.
to say that I hope the Republican establishment win out in this one, but that's probably
Mhm.
going to cause the least amount of problems. They'll cause problems, but that would be the least amount of problems.
And again, that goes back to, did we win the House? Because
Yeah.
who is the speaker is going to make a really big difference in how this all plays out. But they will all backstab each other. They're not friends. We already know that 45 loves to pit everybody against each other. That's what narcissists do. It's actually called slicing or triangulation.
Right.
And it is the tool of a narcissist to gain control and manipulate people. And when they do it, they talk bad about, talk bad about everybody and tell secrets of everybody. So, I mean, they all have secrets on each other. They all have their own objectives and, goals. And so it's going to be a lot of problems, a lot of turnover, I'm guessing, and a lot of JD Vance being the ceremonial type face. I think he is going to be the way that things get done. It will go through him.
But here's the thing. As long as Donald Trump's there, if at any point JD Vance takes the center stage, Donald Trump's not going to tolerate that. He doesn't want him to have
No.
any attention. He doesn't want him to have any power. And if he senses that, that's going to cause a conflict.
Yeah, and it probably will happen in the background, and they'll just put papers on his desk for him to sign. And like I said, I think he'll golf a lot. I don't think we're going to have a traditional type of situation here.
No.
I just don't. I think it's going to be a total shit show and total chaos. That's what authoritarian rule needs is chaos. Look over here, distract, distract. Um, but they will implement, like I said, they will implement horrid and unfathomable things. We will be absolutely appalled. And it will seem like at times that it's never ending because we've been, getting abused by this man since he came down the escalator. But we will get through it. And like you said, because of we have this big system, it is hard to completely tear it down.
Yeah.
And we, I just am holding out hope Hakeem Jeffries is the Speaker of the House because, like I said, that makes a big difference. Um, and that's one of the great things about Joe Biden that if we didn't live in this weird alternate universe that we live in now, he would be revered as an elder statesman who
Absolutely.
honorably served his country for many years. And in any other country, that's how he would be treated. And this is how we've treated this man. And I hope he pardons Hunter on the way out. That's what I hope.
Well, that's the other thing. People are suggesting this. I just don't see him doing it. But in addition to him having nothing to lose between now and the inauguration, um, theoretically has immunity too. He could do a lot of
Yeah.
things. Like somebody suggested that, if there was some credible evidence that something shady was going on with the election,
Mm-hmm.
theoretically he could say, no, stop, we're not doing this. There's something uncredible not credible here, and we're going to have to investigate it. So everything is on hold till I say it's not on hold. And that would
Yeah.
be an official act. And according to what Donald Trump wanted, he would be
Mm-hmm.
able to do that. Now, the question is, would Joe
Mm-hmm.
Biden do that? My problem with Joe Biden is he's so old school and plays by the rules and does all those things. I don't know that he has the wherewithal to do that. I do hope he does pardon Hunter Biden, at
I
least at
do
the
too,
last one.
just for his own safety. For his own
Yeah.
safety.
Well,
Yeah.
and people are also suggesting that he do a bunch of executive directives before he leaves too. Just do a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of shit. Granted that it could be overturned in Congress, but it would take a lot of doing to do it. I just don't know. Joe's too old school. I don't know if he'll do that. I wish he
I
would, but
don't think he, I wish he would too. And maybe he might do a little something but I think he's too much of a traditionalist and he's too proper and he's just not that way. He's old school. I and I think also like if he does issue a bunch of executive orders, they will just spin around in the court. So he, is so that's that we'll have to see how that plays out. Um, if there has been some sort of shenanigans with those bomb threats and with the voting booths, then he
Right.
needs to come out and say so right away. And I think that he would, if there was something. I don't know if he would halt everything. I just don't know how that would work. We would be in totally uncharted territory at that point. But there was something that happened with all of those bomb threats and the evacuations of the buildings and the sheer number that came in, that I I hope that we get some sort of answer, but I'm cautiously optimistic. I don't know if we ever will.
Yeah, I don't know that we ever will either. We've seen so many things that have happened and we don't find anything out about it. Donald Trump has an
Yeah,
assassination attempt. We don't even see a doctor's report. That's the thing that's
yeah.
most frustrating. There's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that we don't know and will never know. So it's impossible for us to react to it or even try to sell it to the Trumplafucks who should know better. And whether it made a difference or not, I'm not sure. But you said we'll get through this. How do we do that? What's the best way to get through this, assuming we go through this for another 4 years?
Um, Let me just change my headset. This one just went
Oh,
down.
no problem.
Um, well, the first is we have to take care of ourselves, because if our cup is empty, we're of no good to anyone else. So right now, the collective is in a trauma response. And so one of the things that you can do when you are in a trauma response is actually take action. You will feel better, right? I know, like when I voted, I felt better. When I put that ballot in, I was like, yes, I did something, right?
Right.
So to actually take some action, even if it's just going for a walk, take care of yourself right now so you can get out of the trauma response. And how we move forward is by not being them.
Right.
In other words, we are kind, we are compassionate, we love our brothers and sisters of the Jewish faith, of the Muslim faith, that I explain to people about migrants. The reason why our economy has rebounded better than other countries is because of migrants.
Right.
And migrants are really an asset to our economy. We need them. And especially here in California, I mean, people need to understand these migrants work hard, and a lot of them do go back and forth. They will go home and then they come and pick blueberries or whatever farming they're doing, and then they will go home and they add tremendous value to our economy. So I think that we need to live our best life, and we need to keep going, and we need to, like I said, tell the marginalized communities, the people in our lives, that we have their back and we are their ally. We, as a bigger plan, we don't know yet because we need this all to shake out. But it seems to me that the resistance is back.
Well,
And
I wonder sometimes if the migrants are even going to be a big deal to the Republicans. We know that when they decided to shoot down the bipartisan border bill, this was all performative for the election. They're
yeah,
notorious for not getting anything done. I wouldn't be surprised if they did nothing with regards to migrants because it's not expeditious to them. It's not, they don't need it to get elected now. So why bother? They don't really care what happens to the country. They'll have some
yeah.
other thing that they'll be arguing about.
Oh yeah, they need a boogeyman, right?
Yeah.
We need a boogeyman. And it was the caravans. But what happened to the caravans? You hear about them, they're coming, and then leaves the news cycle.
Right.
And same with the migrants. I The only thing I would hope, because I think his name is Langford. If I'm wrong, people can correct me in the comments.
Right.
He was one of the orchestrators of that bill. I think he's a senator from Oklahoma.
Right.
He was pissed.
I bet.
He
Yeah.
was pissed. And he went on Fox News. I saw a bunch of clips of him on Fox News, and he was really pissed. So I know he wants to pass that bill, but they're going to do all kinds of shenanigans and have crazy kind of hearings. They're going to pull the same kind of stuff that they pulled before. So whether it will go down on the priority list, I'm not sure. But I know if it was up to him, it wouldn't go down on the priority list. But if they can keep a boogeyman, they will keep a boogeyman. They need something. So if they solve that problem, they don't have a boogeyman.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do, and I'm a firm believer in not worrying about something. Well, I mean, worrying about it, but don't get upset about something you really can't control. We can't control that Donald Trump was elected president. We do have to take some actions once it's happening, and we have, like you say, we have to see what's going on as to decide what we're going to do about it. But there are options for us to do things, and hopefully Hakeem Jeffries ends up being the Speaker of the House. You would think we'd get something out of this, something. Um,
Like I
eh,
said, that's the big difference. If we don't have that, well, it's a different conversation. We have to have a different conversation about where do we go from here. Um, they want us to give up. They want us to be apathetic.
right,
They want us to say we're not going to be involved and not vote again. That's what they want. And so we can't give that to them.
right,
And, in spirituality, you don't want to be in too much resistance because then you're actually pushing against. So we have to like find the balance of calling out what we know to be wrong, but also being in more positive energy, right? So catastrophizing is a trauma response. So
right,
if you're finding yourself going all the way to the worst case scenario, you have a dysregulated nervous system. And there are a lot of resources on YouTube, breathing exercises and things you can look up to regulate your nervous system. And so that's first and foremost. We have to be in our best energy to go deal with this. So we have to take care of ourselves first. Like I said, I think we still have moving pieces about how we continue to organize, but we're going to need to find a new platform because like I said, our communication is on the oligarchs platforms, and that's part of the problem.
right, right, exactly. And unfortunately, these platforms are valuable, so it's hard to not have a platform that isn't owned by an oligarch
Yeah,
or
yeah,
one that
yeah.
wants to control something. I mean, we have the TikTok situation, and the Republicans want to shut it down for obvious reasons. Does that mean TikTok is better than some of the other platforms because the people fighting against it are our foes, or do we run into the same problems with TikTok?
I mean, 45 wanted to shut TikTok down. Remember, he was threatening them. The way their logarithm works there, and I'm not on TikTok, so I can't speak. I only just get little bits and pieces of it when people post stuff. So the real viral stuff I see, but it seems to me you can go viral very quickly. Where on other platforms, it's harder to get that traction. Like
Right,
I know like so many creators that just take off on TikTok, and it seems as though the way the computer selects the For You page is just more clear than the way other social medias aggregate that. So I think TikTok isn't going anywhere as of right now. I think that might fall into one of those isn't a priority for them anymore. It was a real big priority before when people weren't talking, when people were talking, badly about him and disparaging him. But now that he's back into power, he might not care anymore.
no, I mean,
Um,
there'll be bigger issues for him. I went on
mhm,
TikTok as an old man, and the only reason I did it is because I knew if I just started a podcast, nobody would know who I was. So by going on TikTok, I could hopefully garner some kind of audience and then try to transfer them over to the podcast, which worked out fine. But TikTok can have its problems too. There are some really weird, quirky things. For me, if people are watching this podcast, doing the video, watching the video part of it, this is on YouTube, and YouTube is the one that I've had the least amount of trouble with and the least amount of messing around with. I don't know that it's a better platform,
mhm,
but it's an
mhm,
easier one to navigate and it's an easier one without some of the problem. I mean, with TikTok, you're constantly being hit by Trumplafucks, and you're constantly
mhm,
getting people that are imposters of yours. A lot of bots coming in
mhm,
trying to sell people crypto, and they have my face and my video and my name on it, and I report them, and TikTok says, well, that's not a violation. I go, wait a minute, he's got my face, he's got my video. So there are a lot of problems on TikTok, and frankly, the only reason I stay on TikTok right now is because I have a fairly large audience and I feel a responsibility to them to keep doing it. But YouTube seems to be a much better situation for me because it's a lot less bullshit.
Mhm.
So I don't know if YouTube would be a viable option, or we have to start a brand new one. I don't know. I don't, it's
I think, YouTube is what we've got right now. And I found some really great pro democracy creators on YouTube. And like I said, they're all getting a lot, of backlash today too. So you've got to be brave, right, to put yourself out there. And you know, TikTok is where the young people are too. And it's really important that your voice got to young people. Really important. And those of us who's basically lost our dad to MAGA needed a voice like yours. We needed that rational, grounding voice. And that Gen Z isn't on Instagram or YouTube like they like that short form content.
right.
So, in that respect, I think it's really great that you have such a big platform there because you can reach such a wide range of ages where this long form content on YouTube seems to be a little bit more of an older crowd. The younger ones don't seem, they watch shorts maybe, but they don't watch as many, longer videos. That's just not their style.
Right, right. Well, it's an interesting thing. And when I got into it, I had no idea how deeply I would get into it. And it's frustrating because over the last couple of years leading up to this election, I felt like there was some good being done. People were feeling better. People were getting informed and they weren't getting this from the media. And then when something like this happens, this election, and it just all falls apart, you have to wonder, what the fuck do you have to do? I mean, what do you have to do to do some good and try to change some things? The whole while, and I'm not feeling sorry for myself here. I do what I do, and that's fine. I'm just frustrated with the people who follow me, good people. How is it there's so many other people that are just dipshits that are just horrible folks? I don't. It's hard to understand.
It is. And like I said, on our side, it's hard for us to wrap our head around that because we, like I said, want to see a better planet. We want to, have a better society for everybody. And there are just conversations we need to keep having, right? Conversations with people we wouldn't normally talk to because that's how I have learned I can share all of this because of conversations.
Right.
And it has taught me patience. And it has, I mean, I remember first time I watched Old Soul, I was like, oh my gosh, this woman has the patience of a saint
He
because she was
does.
talking about the disinformation she was dealing with. And I remember her saying, I can't believe it's this close. And um, we have to keep talking to our neighbor. Isolating ourselves isn't the answer. Creating community is, having the hard conversations is. And the thing that I just cannot stress to you enough is ultimately the majority of Americans have the same values. There is a small set of Americans that are always going to be assholes. They're, I had this spiritual teacher that used to say they were a child of God cleverly disguised as an asshole.
Yeah.
But there is always going to be that percentage of people. It just is. Just like there's always going to be some percentage of unemployment. There's always going to be some percentage of homelessness. There's always going to be some fraction of our society that is that. But we have to not give up on having the conversations with our neighbors and with people in our community about our shared values. That's how we bypass Fox News. That's how we bypass this disinformation. We talk about what is important to us. And what is important is healthcare, good wages, and that every American has a chance to have the American dream.
Absolutely. Well, Kristen, we're going to wrap things up. We've gone a little ways. I enjoyed the conversation. It's nice to have somebody younger who has an insight that being an old man I can't have. So I know the audience appreciates the perspective as well. You're more than welcome to come back on anytime. Just send me an email, say, Mike, I want to come on, because that's what all people do. There you go. You got anything open today, Mike? Oh, yeah. Okay, let's do it. So anytime you want to come back on, you're more than welcome. I'm sure the people will have gotten a lot out of this.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed our conversation. And thank you to all the listeners. And I just want to tell everybody we're sending you so much love, and we are going to take care of ourselves, and we're going to love ourselves, and we're going to get through this.
We will get through this. We always get through it. For those of you listening, I want to thank you for taking the time to do it. I hope you have a great day.